Welcome to another episode of Follow the Brand. I am your host, Grant McGaw, CEO of 5-Star BDM, a 5-star personal branding and business development company. I want to take you on a journey that takes another deep dive into the world of personal branding and business development using compelling personal story, business conversations, and tips to improve your personal brand. By listening to the Follow the Brand podcast series, you will be able to differentiate yourself from the competition and allow you to build trust with prospective clients and employers. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. Make it one that will set you apart, build trust, and reflect who you are. Developing your 5-star personal brand is a great way to demonstrate your skills and knowledge. If you have any questions for me or my guests, please email me at grant.mcgaugh, spelled M-C-G-A-U-G-H, at 5-star BDM, B for brand, D for development, M for masters.com. Now let's begin with our next 5-star episode on Follow the Brand. Welcome to the Follow Brand Podcast, where we help you to build a 5-star brand that people will follow. In this episode, we will discuss how executives can communicate their capabilities and monetize their skill set with Petra Zink, a certified personal branding and digital strategist, international speaker, coach, consultant, and author. Petra founded impaCCCt, a company dedicated to helping experts turn their expertise into a powerful, profitable authority brand. Petra has developed the Trusted Authority Framework, which helps individuals and executives establish their influence beyond their title, becoming known, respected, and trusted authorities in their industry. Her coaching and consulting programs, keynotes, podcasts, and books provide expert guidance to build future-proof capabilities. We'll be diving into Petra's approach to career leadership development and success in the era of AI, where we must rebuild our brand around the social capital that we built. Petra is a direct, no-nonsense coach focused on getting results and a curator of thoughts. She believes in identifying who you are and knowing why you want to be that persona in the world. Her style is in thought and change leadership, and she believes the only investment that guarantees a return is an investment in yourself. Join us as we learn from Petra's expertise on how to monetize our skills, clarify our transformational offerings, and rebuild our brand for success in the era of AI on the Follow the Brand Podcast, where we are building a 5-star brand that you can follow. Okay, all right, everybody. You know, I love being on the Follow the Brand Podcast when I get a chance to go overseas, to get international, and I get to go all the way over to Australia where, it's in the future. You ever had that conversation? I wonder what it's like in the future. Well, we're going to find out. We're going to find that out. We're going to talk to a personal brand master, Petra Zink. She's been doing this for a while. She really enjoys helping people. She's a leadership coach and a lot more. So we're going to talk to her, and we're going to find out in her future what's going on. So Petra, would you like to introduce yourself?
Grant, thanks so much for having me. And yes, absolutely. Hello from the future. We are 12 to 17 hours difference. What's been happening in the future? The world has changed a lot, which means that we have to rethink career and leadership development. And what I do is I work with technical experts who usually over-index in their capabilities and their credentials, but usually under-index in their ability to communicate and sell themselves to their decision makers. This is who I work with. So I always say I turn technical experts into trusted authorities, that they can make a bigger impact, that they can influence and play a bigger game.
That's, I love the way you just packaged that. So I think for a lot of people, they're like, I think I got it. I think I understand it, because everyone has strengths and weaknesses. Or they have certain things that they have a lot of confidence in, and they have certain things that are they just kind of shy away from, like public speaking. Everybody like, hey, let's go out and do some public speaking. They're like, oh, no, not me. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to do that. However, what we found is that when you start talking about something that you really are passionate about, that you believe in, that you have a movement around, that you have a mission about, you can get in front of as many people as you want and you will not feel that fear. But when you have to talk about certain things that you're just not all that confident about, you start to have a little bit trepidation. You start to, overthink certain things. You try to get everything correct and right. However, it's about getting out there and doing it and just being a part of that whole energy that you're feeling. I think you have the energy and the passion when it comes down to this personal branding. So I want to know from you first, how did you get started in this whole industry? What drives you in your personal brand story?
Well, I never intended to become a personal brand strategist, and here I am nearly 7 years later doing that full time. What happened to me? So I started in brand and product marketing in the fast-moving consumer goods industry, and I thought this is my one and only career. And I worked my backside off. I was the first in, last out, and I progressed very quickly in the first 10 years of my career. And one morning, my manager called me in and said, let's go out for lunch. And it was a Friday. And I thought, well, it must be time for my next promotion because I did all the right things. I worked long hours, was taking all the responsibilities, all the projects on board. So I demonstrated my capabilities. And she said, actually, we are putting you on a performance improvement plan. And I said, what? Excuse me? What just happened? I was already in celebration mode. I already mapped out the weekend, what I've been doing to celebrate the promotion. Then the opposite happened. And she said, we see that you are a really hard worker, but you are managing at that stage 18 boards. Your role is about influence. It's about making an impact. It's about getting people on the same page. It's about stakeholder management, not you doing the doing. You're not enabling your team to actually do their jobs. And this was the first time when I realized my perception about what's required to get ahead and my leadership team's perception were completely two different worlds. And whilst it was my biggest asset in the first 10 years of my career, which is the entry level, it didn't serve me for the next 10 years. And this bruised my ego, not a little, but a lot. So I got out of the industry and thought I'm not suitable for the marketing career and profession. I am not good enough. And, all the negative spiral came into place. And it was kind of by accident that a recruiter asked me, would you be interested in recruitment yourself? And I just thought, no. Why would I? I have got a master's in marketing. So of course I stay in marketing. But then I thought about it further and I thought, well, it's probably a good time for me to also upskill in digital and social media marketing because I progressed way too quickly in my career that I had teams doing it and I was never hands-on. That was about 10 years ago now, and everyone required the next leader to have those skills and I didn't. So I thought it might be a good way to actually upskill and then go back in a couple of years into marketing, but that never happened. So what happened in recruitment, I got the opportunity to start a new desk. That was the only way how I actually landed the job in recruitment. And they said, there's digital technology. Apparently it's a thing. We don't know what it is. We don't have a candidate. We don't have a client, but you go, you build it. If you don't build it within the next 6 months, you're out. I was like, okay, no pressure. So what I did, I was just asking so many questions because at that stage, I didn't even know what SEO, search engine optimization, means. So I literally Googled everything. But what I didn't realize, me asking so many questions to my candidate, how they got into it, what they do on a day-to-day basis, in a way that I can understand it, I could become their translator. And usually commercial decision makers don't have that technical background either. And they don't know all the intricacies of the languaging, the coding languages, for example, or any kind of analytics language. And I could simply say, what you want to do with your business in, a couple of years? Well, Joe, he's actually done exactly that. And what he could do to your organization would be A, B, and C. So I simply became the translator back and forth. And I placed over 300 candidates in the next 4 years. And I thought, this is pretty cool.
Nice.
But you can only place so many candidates as a recruiter. And I thought, how good would it be if there's a way how I can help my candidates to clarify their value proposition, like what is their competitive advantage? Because then they can communicate it confidently and clearly in an interview or online, and then they can commercialize it in one or another way. So it might be with a full-time position, it might be with their own business, it might be through a board role or a speaking engagement. And this is how impact with CCC was born, because everyone wants to make an impact, but how to get there and what does impact mean to them is different to everyone. So this is my signature framework that I developed nearly 8 years ago now. And since then, I've evolved, and we're now talking about the trusted authority because the world of work has changed. 2020 was a big turning point in many ways, and how we influence, how we get ahead in a more distributed and global work environment is very different compared to the early 2000s. And this is where we are right now.
Well, I love the story. I love the story. I think a lot of people in the audience will be able to relate, because it's about the transference of skills in time and space. It didn't mean like when you're, like you said, you're at your job, you're doing a great job, you felt you're doing a good job. You're talking about a decade of doing the job, wasn't a few months or just a year or so, just a decade, and you had it had run its course, and then you realized that you needed now to pivot and gain some new skills. And then you took a chance. You took a role. No, and like you said, it was no pressure. You got 6 months to pull this together, or you're done. You're out there looking for another job. But you utilize your inner skill sets. You got outside your comfort zone, and you began to see where you fit into that puzzle. And here you are today. Now you have your own framework for recruitment. Tell the audience a little bit more about these 3 C's that you've put together into a framework that you call your own.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it all comes down to having self-awareness. And it sounds such a fluffy word, but if you can actually create an outcome to what self-awareness means, you have already won half the battle. Because in a second, you know, what are my strengths, what I'm energized by, but also what I'm drained by. How can I refill my cup? Where can I naturally outperform others without being drained afterwards? And who do I need to be surrounded by to complement my weaknesses? You're showing up in a very different way. And in the end, I always say, as much as people buy into your competence, meaning how good you are, they buy more so into your confidence. So in a second, you know where and how you can contribute to the team in the best possible way. And also, where should you stay away, because it just takes you forever. You are not enjoying it. Everyone else can easily take over. You know exactly what kind of projects you're pitching to, or what kind of teams you want to build. And in the end, building high-performing teams comes down to you being a high performer yourself in the first place. And often we've got those blind spots and we don't realize why we are so drained after a day of work, because there's a difference between being tired, which is normal, and being drained. And I didn't realize in my last marketing role, all of a sudden everything felt heavy, because the first 8 years when I progressed so quickly was always in my high performance zone without knowing it. And then all of a sudden it switched from innovation, product and brand management, which was very creative, future thinking, forward thinking, to stakeholder management, budgets, constant discussions and high level conversations in a very aggressive way. Also, it was not aligned with me, my personality, my strength at all. And I woke up and was tired already. And I didn't realize I was just trying to push so hard. And this is exactly what leads to burnout. But then on the other side, what people don't realize, burnout can also come from not being challenged enough. So you may have a level of skills and competencies and energy that high, but the challenge that you're facing is that low. So you're constantly trying to do better. And this is what we are wired as human beings. We want to grow, we want to develop, but there's not the challenge there. And this can also lead to burnout. And this is exactly what clarification means. Like, what is it that you can provide to this world in one or another way? And how can you then communicate and commercialize it? So communication comes down to not the features, meaning how many years of experience you've got and how many degrees you had. Like, this is a thing of the past. Communicating, meaning what is the value you can provide? What's the transformation that you can provide based on your credentials and also your characteristics? Mm-hmm. And then finally, it's the commercialization. Like, how can you best monetize this skill set? Is it best to stay in a corporate environment, for example, because this is where you naturally thrive in? Or is it more an entrepreneurial setup? Is it portfolio careers, which we're talking about a lot in this future of work, where you have different engagements? It might be a board role, it might be speaking, it might be consulting, it might also be contracting. Like, what's the best way for you to commercialize your area of expertise? And also, once you know how to actually pitch yourself, how to create value, you can pivot over and over again, because you always tap into the same base of strength and skills and characteristics. But depending on what's happening in the market, you can pivot your message, you can pivot your offer. Like the last thing that I say in this aspect, since 2020, as I said, it was a turning point in so many ways. And what I've also realized was, and is, sense of urgency is higher than ever before. Like, COVID-19 happened to us, but now everyone changes the lens and say, no, we make things happen for us. And most of my personal brand coaching programs were between 3 and 6 months, depending on how much support my clients got. I condensed it into a full day experience with done for you elements, because nobody's got time to waste anymore. Like, why would you wait 3 or 6 months for a result if you could get it within 24 hours? Wow. So it's also rethinking how can you address changes in the market based on what you can provide. Like, the method and the idea and the process, they haven't changed. I just optimized it, used a lot more technology, and fast-tracked the results, because this is what the market needs right now. In 2 years' time, it's probably a different offer, but the same result, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. First, I like your ingenuity, and that you're taking all your different skill sets and you're pulling it all together, because you still are a marketing expert. You didn't lose any of that. And then you were able to then, utilize these new skills that you got, understanding people and career and business development. And what are the tenets of helping someone to understand the process that they would need to go through to get that result. One thing we talked about earlier, and I love the conversation we had a little early before we jumped on the mic, is that sometimes you have to understand the relationship between the coach and the student. Every coach is not right for a student, and the opposite. And there's work that has to be done on both sides of the ball to get the right result. You here in the United States, we play a lot of sports. You've got football, you got basketball, you got baseball, you've got some coaching legends. And I guarantee you, those coaches had a lot of players on their team, not just, the few that we've probably come to know and learn about, and their Hall of Famers and that type of thing. But a lot of people went through that particular coach. And some people would say, no, he didn't coach me right. And because the communication level wasn't the same, the passion, the energy, it just wasn't a good match. Help us understand what you're looking for in the right student that fits your coaching program.
Absolutely. I'll give you a good example that literally summarizes my coaching style. My manager from 10 years, nearly 11 years ago, he reached out just a few weeks ago and said, you know what, you've been the only one to date who was always in my face, was very upfront, very straight, didn't sugarcoat anything, and I want you as my coach. I'm Austrian. I'm very much, I'm not sugarcoating things. I'm telling you your baby's ugly if that's what gets you unstuck. And there are so many coaches who don't necessarily do it. And it's all about asking what's on your mind. Like, I want to get to results fairly quickly. And it's not everyone's style. There's a lot of people who prefer the nurturing side a lot and very tapping into the emotions. It's not my style. So not everyone resonates with it, but I'm also not the right coach for everyone who wants more nurturing, who wants more emotional support. So it's knowing who can you serve the best way because they resonate with you already and who isn't. Like, we've got all so many skills, so many strengths, so many capabilities. But if you don't meet people with the energy level where they are at, it's going to be very hard to get them this transformation that they are looking for.
Let me ask you this, because now we've heard somewhat about you, how you got to where you are. Who was your mentor? Who was your coach? Who do you look up to? Who's been the biggest impact that you look to emulate, that you get a lot of inspiration from? Who would you describe there?
I wouldn't say there's one person. I'm a curator of thoughts. I'm listening to somebody and say, oh, that resonates with me, but their other approach, it's not quite me. I think there's the saying, smart people steal from others, wise people curate insights from others, or something along the lines. I probably butchered this completely, but this is, I think, one of my strengths, to connect the dots and make something new out of that. So it might be that I heard a snippet of somebody, but their positioning, their specialization is completely different. And this is also what I teach my clients, what I call the lateral thinking approach. Mm-hmm. What works in this industry, in this profession for this person, and why, and how can I apply it to my personal situation, taking your personality, your characteristics, your strengths into consideration. So it's not copying somebody and trying to be somebody you're not. It's more identifying who you are, be more of that, and knowing why you want to be like that. Like in my first manager job, I got so many complaints because I had my teams crying all the time. And I thought I'm, the wrong person for leading people. But again, it comes down to my approach being very direct and saying, you can't do that, do it again. Whereas now my coaching clients pay me a premium for that because they don't have time to sugarcoat things. Like it's a different level that I was playing back then, but I just didn't realize that. And I thought it's my fault, it's my weakness, it's not good enough. It was just the wrong context for my style. Mm-hmm. So I agree, in a team environment, you need to be able to have a high level of emotional intelligence and meet people where they are. It's not where I can strive in. So I always say my type of leadership is thought leadership and change leadership, not people management. And this is also what so many leaders or emerging leaders often don't realize and don't do their homework, that they think the only way to progress is for me to have a team, and then a bigger team, and then a department, and then a bigger department, then a company. But it's not the only way to progress these days. You can make an impact and influence very differently, and it's not just leading people.
This episode is brought to you by 5-Star BDM. 5-Star BDM is a professional consulting and advisory group keenly focused on business development services for small to mid-sized businesses and entrepreneurs. Although every business is unique, they often share challenges that can be addressed through smart branding. Services include process improvement in operations, digital strategy and transformation, business intelligence, digital marketing, and personal branding. Our 5-Star business and personal branding company has helped a number of professionals and organizations to optimize and grow. The result is more business, more opportunities, better reach, positive outcomes. Please visit www.5starbdm.com to learn more and view all the episodes of Follow the Brand. That is so profound. I like that because there's many different ways to arrive at a similar result. Someone was telling me that, hey, Walmart, they're a multi-billion-dollar company, and yet you have Gucci, they're a multi-billion-dollar company. They're both billion-dollar companies, but they get there in a completely different way. You have to find your way. I think that's the biggest thing. We have to unfold ourselves and take some chances and to do some things that don't always have a known outcome. We don't really know exactly how it's going to come out. However, we're willing to take the chance, be on the journey. Life is an adventure. You don't want to be that person like, wow, I wish I should have did this, or could I have done that? And you just stayed in that one little spot, and that's all you ever did. And before you know it, your time has come. And then this is what I found: a lot things happen. Let's say someone else had a similar situation that you just did. They have been working in this job 10, 20, 30 years. They have been doing it a certain way, a certain process, and the culture was similar. But all of a sudden, the company maybe got bought out, or they're beginning to lay off. Or there was a change that happened, and everything that you're used to went away, And those skill sets that you had utilized for a long period of time were no longer relevant. And now you find yourself at a point of obsolescence. We're starting to feel that a lot in our world today as AI, artificial intelligence, has really taken root. People are starting to realize, wow, this is going to change things. How exactly? Not sure, but it's going to change things. But are you willing to change with it? Do you have any input around that?
100%. I think nowadays it's not a nice to have to be able to reinvent yourself, to reposition yourself. It's a must have, because what we're seeing with organizations, they're getting a lot flatter and leaner because there's more competition in the market. We see a lot more startups and a lot more, the great resignation happening. So a lot more executives and senior leaders stepping out of corporate because after COVID-19, they've realized that there's more to life than just a 9 to 5 would be nice, probably a 9 to 9, more so in their world, and wanting to have weekends again and so forth. So they are now competing with the big fours, for example, but they don't have the overheads. So now we also see with the big four, for example, there's a massive layoff happening. Even Accenture, 2.5% of the entire workforce, which is hundreds of thousands of people, are being laid off in the next few months. Like, this is massive. And as you also just addressed, the big tech layoffs that have been happening, like they've overinvested in human capital the last couple of years, and now they can't keep up with that anymore. So, and this is also what I realized, my biggest asset, working hard and developing my skills, that had become my biggest baggage all of a sudden, because I have not evolved with time. I have not built my network. I was so busy working in my career that I hadn't had any time to work on my career. And this is also what so many high performers do. They invest all their time, energy, and money into their current career, but not working on what's next. And who do I need to know? Who needs to know of me to prepare myself? And the last thing that I would also say is the next generation. Like, there's some research on Gen Z, who will have on average 5 different careers, and in those 5 careers, 17 different jobs, and stay in a role for 1.8 years. And I think AI, as you just mentioned, has and will continue to fast track that even further, because so many tasks and skill sets that are in demand today may not be in demand tomorrow. So how can you still future-proof yourself? And this comes down to having the self-awareness again. How can I repackage my natural strength and my skills? And also, what skills do I need to add to my toolkit? And how can I repackage that into what's required today and tomorrow and in 3 years' time?
These are very interesting realities. And I want my audience to really, really tune into this. I've been in sales for 25 years. I've been in information technology for the same amount of time. And the only constant is change. You need to understand that you are the brand. You are the service. You are the CEO of your own enterprise. And as the CEO of your own enterprise, it is your job to have that foreseeable future. That's what CEOs do. They're not working on usually the now, they're working on what's next and making sure they can create that next now that's going to be creative. We have to do that, get that mindset shift for ourselves. This is why I got into personal branding. I got into business development, because I began to understand I have a career. I don't have a job. My job will change probably several different times, and has in my career several different times. I don't work in that world where my mom had worked in, where she had the one job. She worked for 30, 40 years, got the pension and the 401k, and she's, retired, and that's it. My career was more jagged than that, and more different than that. And companies were not as resilient, meaning they didn't last as long. I think the average now of a company maybe like 5, maybe 10 years max. And here's a shocker: most CEOs only last 3 years in their position. 3 years as the CEO of, I don't care what major corporation is, they have a 3-year shelf life. So if you're not thinking in the future, what is next? And who knows you, and why should they know you? So you can then still remember, even though you've lost that particular role, or you lost that particular job. Now it's just a matter of how can I apply my knowledge, my wisdom, my skill sets into a new endeavor that's truly going to help solve problems for others. And it's a mind shift change. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. It's 100% a mindset change that we have to take in consideration. Like I always say, we go from IQ, like how much you know, how good you are, to EQ. How can you get the best out of others? How can you curate collective knowledge? How can you create a conversation for an answer that nobody knows yet, but everyone's got their own input? And also the power shift. It's not the one who's got the most years of experience or the highest level of expertise. You cannot have 10 years experience in AI or in machine learning on that level that we are facing now, because we've never experienced that before. So again, it comes down to, who do I need to be surrounded by? How can I curate the conversation that we get to an answer? How can we be resilient to change? How can we create the change before it happens to us? How can we take control over what's happening next? Because there's a big difference how we show up, whether we have to react because something happens to us or we respond. So this is happening. I'm doing this before I get crushed by the wave. I'd rather ride the wave.
That's it. And it's difficult business, but it could be fun because it is an adventure. It's a journey. I also want to caution people about this. Let's talk about information for a minute. Information, you can easily get information, meaning you can read as many books as you want about swimming, or you can read as many books that you want about golf. But I guarantee you, when you go to play golf or you go to swim for that first time, it's not going to look like it did in the book. You need more than that. So you need applied knowledge. You need applied applications. So you know yourself how to swim. You know yourself how to golf. And then I guarantee you, as you're golfing and you're swimming, all those things that you learned about are like, oh, well, you know what? Now that I know what they're talking about with this butterfly stroke, let's just say. And if I go a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right, I'm going to get a little bit more, done. That's the expertise that you have. So coaching and mentoring and utilizing services like Petra has is something you're going to need to engage, but you're going to have to do some work yourself. Both of us, with the coach or whether the student, have to put in their time. They have to, put in the appropriate effort to get to the right result. I'm going to ask Petra, if you had talked to my audience right now, what kind of advice would you give people that are on the fence, thinking about a program, thinking about, is this the right way to go? What advice or what kind of insight would you want to give to them so they can make a better decision?
Absolutely. Well, I always say the best and the only investment that guarantees you a return on it is investing in yourself. Like, it's so easy for us to get lost in buying handbags and beautiful cars and, shoes and whatever it might be, because it's a short-term gratification and it feels good. But what have you got 2-3 days after that, 2 months after that? Investing in your own skill sets, creating this awareness, adding new tools to your toolkit, this is exactly what helps you future-proof yourself. And it's this compound effect. When you do it something once, nothing happens. When you do it twice, nothing happens. When you do it 20, 30, 300 times, everything changes. And this is where so many people give up before they actually get any traction, because they've posted 2 weeks in a row and they didn't get the big engagement. Well, no way. What a surprise. Others have done it for 6 years and they're committing to the long game. So the question is, what is it that you committed to work on, but also what is it that you are committed to lose and not do anymore? And that is a big question, because you cannot add everything to your plate and not let go of something. And also this identity shift. It's not what title you've got or the level of seniority that you have that makes you successful or that gives you a certain level of power. It's how can I influence? How can I create change? How can I leave my legacy, whatever that means, in my own right? So, and this starts with investing in yourself. And often, to be honest, that's the last thing that I'm saying. What I see is clients are not engaging a coach or enrolling in a program, not necessarily because of the coach or the program. They don't believe that they've got what it takes to make it work. And then you come up with all the excuses. I don't have time. Nobody's got time. You make time. It's too expensive. Like, what's the return on it? What does it cost you to not invest? I need to talk to my partner. All those traditional objections come into play, but this is just an excuse to get a way out because they either don't trust themselves or they don't trust that it works for their own situation.
This is so true. The biggest hurdle I always get in sales is it's not competition. It's not there's another option out there. But there is another option. And then usually the other option is I do nothing. I'm just going to do nothing. I'm going to just have the status quo. I'm just going to keep doing what I am doing. And I already know I'm going to keep getting the result that I have right now. And if you believe in that, you're probably right. If you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting. And the only way you make a change in that is that you have to change some behavior. And it's not super easy to change your own behavior. It is good to get information. It is good to tune into YouTube stuff. It is good to curate some information. But then you're going to get to that point, and you'll know it when you get there. Guaranteed, you're going to know it. I need someone to help me to do this, because now you've got to that point where you can't go backward, and you've only got to go forward. And isn't it so nice that you know someone that's a little bit further down the pathway than where you're at, right now, that someone like Petra can reach out like, I see where you're at. I know where you need to go. We can make these tweaks in your game and what you want to achieve. Trust me, I've seen this before. And I know that Petra, because I've seen your work. I've looked at it, and I'm like, wow, you're doing phenomenal job. And how long you been doing this now?
Well, full-time, 7 years, part-time, because I still had to learn personal branding myself back then for nearly 10.
Well, here's
a little while.
here's the good question that I know a lot of people ask this, is that because you're doing a job, and then you were doing this part-time, and then became full-time. What was the change? When did you find that this was the way to go and it could actually start supplying your life full-time? What changed? Tell us that story, how that happened.
Well, it was, again, kind of forced. Like, all of my big changes have been forced, but in a good way. Because often, as you said, we like the status quo because we can predict what happens tomorrow. And our brain is wired to keep us safe, not to keep us happy. So if I'm unhappy and miserable, but I know exactly what happens tomorrow, I'd rather take that certainty over. I could be incredibly happy. I could be super successful, but I'm not quite sure if it actually works out. So no, thank you. So what happened in my last corporate role, I hated the environment. I'm the biggest introvert you will ever see. And it was a big, open, planned office. Everyone was just so noisy. I couldn't hear my own thoughts. And there was literally a 24/7 kind of environment. And I had a 6 months contract. I signed up, big sign up bonus and so forth. So I had to stay there the 6 months. And then I said, you know what, now is the chance, get out, do it or don't do it. And I also had a couple of clients saying they want to do coaching. So I had a bit of a runway and I had some savings, and I thought, I just need to make this work, and I've never looked back. So sometimes the kick in your backside is a good thing to get you moving, because in a second we are comfortable and safe and certain, it's quite likely that we're staying there.
I'm glad you said, because that's the truth. You have to speak truth to yourself. And I love how you just said that, because even though you know that tomorrow might be, somewhat miserable, not the total happiness, but it's predictable. It's very predictable, and the alternative is not. But I think there's this thing called transition, just like the seasons that we have in our world. It transitions a bit at a time every single day. Every single day, we have change, whether we're like now in the United States, we're going from winter to spring, but it's a transition that it happens a little bit at a time. Before you know it, it's totally changed, and it'll continue to do that. And I believe in our world, as we look at the seasons that we're in our lives, sometimes they do happen abruptly, but a lot of times it's a transitional type phase, but you have to initiate it and you have to be conscious in your decisions to like, this is where I'm at, because it's where your passion lie. I think that's one thing that you do. So before I let you go, Petra, I'd like to give the mic to you. I'd like you to engage with the audience. Tell them whatever you feel that you have not shared already that you feel that would be important.
I would say the way how we think about career, leadership development, and success, we need to rethink that, because it's not about staying in a company the longest or having the most credentials or the most level of knowledge, because we cannot compete with AI, and this is what we're doing nowadays. So the only way how you can go from having all the capabilities is to also build your brand in terms of what's the value I can provide, what's the reputation, the social capital that I want to build, what is it that I want to be associated with beyond my title, beyond my credentials, because this is exactly what helps you to future-proof yourself. If you've always just been known as the accountant, but not as somebody who can make data-driven decisions for business growth, for example, which is a lot more broad, whilst being very specific, it's going to be very hard to transition. So the one thing that I would say, build the roof before it rains. So it might be that you're super comfortable, that everything goes well, and it goes well for so long until it doesn't go well at all anymore. And then it's usually too late. And people say, I need to make money next week, or I need to find a new job next week. Nothing happens overnight. Nothing happens within a week. So the more comfortable you are, the more in danger you are now, because no job is safe these days anymore. And we are seeing that with the big tech companies who never thought would lay off that many people. And it just continues from now on. So build a roof before it rains, build your runway, prepare for the transition also when you don't need it just now, because the change will happen quicker than you think it's coming.
Very, very true. There is a tsunami coming for all of us. Change is inevitable. Very, very true. So if you can prepare for that, that's adaptability. And that is a great skill set to have. So if the audience would like to get in touch with you, Petra, what is the best possible way?
I live on LinkedIn to start with, Petra Zink, but also my website, impaCCCt, is a great starting point. And because I also have a podcast, and we are on a podcast, probably a trusted authority, podcast is a good way to binge listen to nearly 100 episodes. So
Excellent. Excellent.
Yes.
No, I love that. We are past 100 episodes on the Follow Brand podcast. I'm very, very happy with that. We are providing good knowledge, wisdom, and the extended network of people that can, this is my tribe, the Follow Brand tribe at 5-Star BDM. This is my tribe. And I love that you've reached out to us, that we can have this conversation. Let's continue to network and to grow together. And for your audience, they can reach me at 5-Star BDM. And that is B for brand, D for development, InforMasters.com. Thank you very much, Petra. This was great.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.